Hello, and welcome to the Navigating Solo podcast, a dedicated platform where we explore the unique needs and concerns of solo aging with a focus on empowerment, connection, and proactive planning. I'm your host, Ailene Gerhardt, and today I am pleased to welcome our guest, Elizabeth Edwards. Elizabeth, a proud native of Boise, Idaho, has a diverse professional background. After growing up in Boise, she moved to California in the early 1980s, where she worked in the hotel and restaurant industry. In 1990, she married and welcomed her son in 1991. Once her son began school, Elizabeth returned to the workforce full time, building a successful career in sales and marketing until 2009 when she transitioned into massage therapy. In 2013, Elizabeth returned to her hometown of Boise and established a massage practice, which she operated until the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. During this time, she also pursued higher education, earning a bachelor's degree from Boise State University with a focus on leadership, project management, and business aesthetics. Additionally, she has also earned associate degrees in fine arts, restaurant management, and social science. In November of 2022, Elizabeth launched her business, Black Swan Daily Money Management, serving the greater Treasure Valley region of Idaho, and is associated with the American Association of Daily Money Managers. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, Eileen, thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that.
Fabulous. Thank you for also being open to sharing your story and your experiences and the opportunity to really give our listeners some new insight and things to learn from. I really appreciate that. You recently had a serious fall and a challenging recovery process that deeply impacted your understanding of solo aging. Are you able to walk us through what happened and how this experience shifted your perspective on solo aging?
Yes, Eileen, I would be really happy to share this. And I think that I didn't even know what solo aging was until Nancy Ruffner had a post about your event on May 15th for Savvy Day. And I saw it on LinkedIn and I started sharing it with local sources here. So when I stopped to think about all this, it was like, I think I took a crash course in what solo aging is. And I was walking with a friend. I have a friend that I walk with every week. And it was May 20th, Saturday, Memorial Day weekend. And we were walking by the river. And I thought I saw a place to fish. So I mentioned it to her. And she said, "Would you like to go back and see it?" And I said, "Yeah." So I have this dog. He's a rescue. His name is Georgie Porgy. And he's partially blind and very deaf and about 8 to 10 years old. And I had his leash, the loop attached to my belt so I could have my hands free, which I would strongly suggest nobody ever does. And we were going down a little tiny, it was just a small decline. And I felt myself start to go forward. So I tried to pull him back with my left hand. And then I could feel I was going forward. So I reached out with my right hand to grab a branch and there was no branches. And the next thing I knew, I was flat on the ground with my head toward the river and my feet toward the bike path. And I screamed probably louder than I've ever screamed in my life. And I have the friend, she calmed me down. She asked me to breathe and got me a little bit more still and helped me up. And I could tell something was wrong with my arm because it just felt like club and I couldn't wiggle my fingers very well. So she asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, "We need to put ice on it." So we walked down to a little place that had beverages and I got a big bag of ice and put it on my arm. And then she shared with me that there was what we call dock in the boxes down at the end of the road we were on. So I figured it would be good to go in there. I'm a person that doesn't ask for help very often. And I also don't like to take people's time if I know they have other things to do. So we went into the dot box and she stayed outside and I saw the doctor. She took x-rays and she came out and said, "You got the bones of an 80-year-old woman." And then she told me that I had a fracture in my wrist, but she couldn't, she was not a radiologist. So she wanted to send it to the radiologist. I said, okay. And she asked me about medications and I told her what I took and she gave me 2 Tylenol. And so my friend took me home and I laid down for a little bit. Oh, and this doctor she gave me a left hand wrist for the right hand.
Oh,
And when she put it on, I was like fresh from the
right.
accident and thinking, this is weird. Is this a new kind of? So I got home and I laid down for a little bit and I was thinking, okay, what do I need to do? My car was still down there. I called a childhood friend and I told her about what happened and asked her if her and her partner could take me down to get the car and one of them could drive it back. They did that. And I didn't do anything all Sunday. And by Monday, I was in so much pain. I knew I had to reach out and tell my friends. And I have a group of friends. I call them my butt sisters because we've all grown up together. And I feel like they know me the best. And one of them had been my emergency contact. And she had just asked if somebody else would do it. So the day I took the fall is actually the day I was going to do all that work. So I ended up going through a process of going back to an associated doc in the box. It was the same one at a different location on Tuesday because that's when a friend could take me. And then they told us to go to this orthopedic place that was associated with them. So we went to them and I got the x-rays. And that doctor told me, he said, you're going to have an operation and you're going to have a metal plate and screws in your hand. And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. So then I had to wait for an appointment to go to a surgeon to see a surgeon that would do it. And another different friend took me and people have been asking me, do you need any help? Do you need any help? Can I take you? And I'm like, no, it's covered. No, it's covered because the friend that took me to the surgeon had told me that she would take me to my operation. And I asked her like 3 times because she'd taken this job and I knew the job was a very erratic kind of a lot of moving pieces. She said, no, I'm sure. And then I got a text on Sunday that she couldn't take me because of her job. And that kind of, I guess people say trigger. I get it triggered me because every morning I was waking up and as soon as I get up, all the pain would rush down my arm. And I wasn't taking Tylenol. I was just like living through it. So I ended up going with the first friend to the surgeon and talked to them. And as they were going through the process of trying to get me to fill out paperwork online, I was going through the process of suddenly I knew I had to communicate with them and nobody else was there to help me. So I was learning how to text with my left hand. I really don't do that a lot. And voice command on my computer, which takes a while before it understands you. So there were a lot of conversations that weren't clear. And I will have to admit, I probably said some words that I don't usually say. Because I was trying to move through it and I was in so much pain and I knew what had to be done to get the operation. And so that doctor decided that he didn't want to work with me. And I ended up going back to my primary physician, had to go through the whole course again, started with her. And I asked to go to one of the local hospitals that is in my family's history. My mother used to nurse there. I had a birth defect when I was young, so I spent my first 4 years of my life there, and I really liked that hospital. And they couldn't get the surgery done in time because by then it was like, I think in its 4th week, and it was supposed to be taken care of sooner than that. So then they released it into the system to see if there was a doctor in the valley that could take it. And this doctor connected with me and the childhood friend who had been taking me along the way to the doctor, he had operated on her. So then we thought, okay, this is good. So we go in there. His PA takes x-rays. When he comes in and he goes, we can't work on this. You have to go see a hand-arm specialist. And I was like, this is everything that happened in this process. It was just, I just felt like I was watching a circus, and everything I thought something was secure, it would fall apart. And I reached out to the director of physical therapy at the place I go to physical therapy and said, hey, do you know anybody that's a hand wrist surgeon? And he actually did. And he actually had gone to school with this gentleman. And so he referred me to him. And I just called him and said, look, I need to get a surgery. I knew after I went to that second surgeon and his PA told me we can operate on this. I knew I had to get somebody else in there because I knew that I thought I was advocating for myself. But as we all know, when you're in pain, it's really hard to navigate through life sometimes. I knew I needed somebody, and I reached out and left a message on one of my colleague phones, who is a patient advocate. I found out about a week later she'd been out of town.
Oh,
When I didn't hear from her in a few days, I reached out to another colleague who is a patient advocate and a death doula. And man, they both just jumped in and started helping me. And one of them went with me to the hand surgeon, not interview, the appointment, so that she could ask questions that I didn't even know to ask, which was
mhm.
very helpful to me. And then the other one, she basically rearranged her schedule to take me to the surgery, bring me home, make sure that she was there until somebody else came, because in Idaho, you have to have coverage for 24 hours or they won't operate on you. And then she came every day. Um, she made me take that medicine every 4 hours, which I probably wouldn't have done. I probably would have taken it, fallen asleep, and even in the middle of the night, she made me get up and ice my arm where I could. She made me eat. After about 2 days, she made me get in the shower. And the other one took my dog and took care of Georgia Porgy for a week. So these two women basically just rearranged everything to help me navigate through the process, because I'd been so focused on getting a surgeon. I honestly didn't think anything about post-op, not at all.
I think the whole notion, as you said, when you're in pain, when you're the patient, right? No matter what your professional or personal skills are, how organized you are, how methodical you may be, when it's your experience, when you're living in it, it is hard to do as much you did a tremendous amount of advocating for yourself, but you also were in significant pain, and having from the get-go the support and backup of friends to help, even just that initial calming down. And
Yeah,
then,
exactly.
and then, okay, what could the game plan be? And navigating the initial treatment and then follow-up treatments, and being able to land on connecting with a patient advocate, which it sounds based on your own professional experience as a daily money manager, you knew about other pros who might be good partners. And so landing with reliable patient advocates is fantastic. And we can certainly add some more information about the patient advocates and how you find a patient advocate and all of that to the show notes, because I know that will be helpful for some people. This may be the first time they're hearing about that, and quite honestly, about daily money management as well. So we'll talk about that briefly at the end. So, all of these things, it sounds, was really the first time you were navigating a lot of this solo, whether you frame yourself as a solo ager, depending on the framework, depending on the continuum of how people might self identify. And again, for me, it's a continuum and a framework. And so having those pieces of the support system, you mentioned childhood friends, you mentioned people you have to call on, even that change in who your emergency contact may be, all of those pieces sound like they played a significant role. They couldn't change any of the pain you were going through or the medical part of it, but how they supported that, how they offered guidance and navigation and just overall support, comfort, care, helped you maintain a medication schedule, which, as you said, you easily may not have, as napping and getting rest is also really important, especially medication that might induce that as well. Do you have advice for people for whom they are working to enhance their support system? For some people, that sounds like an end goal for them, and to not be, we don't want anyone to have a medical experience of any kind, but they do happen. But in terms of, there are people thinking and listening to this or watching this that are thinking about, how do I enhance my support system? Who do I put in place? Are they professionals? Are they friends? Are they neighbors? Do you have advice for people who might identify as solos, or just in general who may not feel they have that support system in place?
Yes, and thank you for asking me that because I didn't really consider myself solo because I've got living family members. I've got a grown son that lives in another state, but that I'm navigating life alone, and I found I would say to have an advance directive. I think it's really important. I think anybody 18 and over should have an advance directive anymore because you never know what happens in life. And this was a total fluke. After I got up from the fall, I saw a couple of roots and I realized that's really what had made me fall was hitting my right foot with those roots. But I think it's important to have an advance directive, which I had. I knew I needed to change it, but to fill that out, and yes, it's and a will and your power of attorney. I think it's important to have those things filled out. And it's not the most pleasant process filling out your own paperwork on your own. Okay, if this is what's going to happen to me, what do I really want? But it really is helpful to other people. And I don't know about other states, but when I went to that operation, I had to have an advance directive or they wouldn't operate on me. And my next operation next week, I got a request yesterday. You have to have your advance directive. I think it's really important to do that work. And it's a simple thing that you can do. And there's all kinds of resources out there. I think there's one called My Wishes or My
Mhm.
Five
Five
Wishes.
Witcher. Yeah,
Five
there's Five
Wishes.
Witchers, Conversation Project, Honoring Choices. There are a number of great resources. We'll
Yes,
add this
because
to your.
the truth is that we're all, unless we become robots, unless we choose to become robots, we're all gonna go through the death experience. And
Fleet.
I was brought up in a funeral directing family, so I think I've had more of an awareness of how important it is to have. I've been around a lot of death my whole life, and I think that it's hard enough when you lose a loved one because there's all these emotions that come up and everything that goes with losing a loved one. I think it's only makes it easier, and I think it's a gift to the living family members if you have things in order. And I would also say for solo agers to start looking into patient advocacy. I know when I was at one of the hospitals, they had a little sign that said something about having the patient advocate. You could get it through the hospital. That's good if they offer that because a lot of us don't live in the medical world. We don't know all the terminology and we don't know when somebody tells us what's going on with our body, what that really means. So if you have somebody that's there that knows, and really, I think if you go in for anything more than a cold or the flu, if you've got an operation or something, you need to have somebody there that understands medical terminology so that you can have a conversation with them and you can understand.
If that's a very knowledgeable friend or someone who's willing to take notes and sort of parse out some of the things that may have been explained, and or a healthcare advocate, patient advocate who understands navigating the system, going back to that whole thing that when you're preparing to go into a surgery, those skills of being methodical, organized, all of that, taking notes, you're not taking notes on that gurney in that
Yeah.
hospital robe and socks. That's not where you are. You're preparing for something totally different. And so to have other people with you that can help you navigate that, I think is always outstanding. I think the other piece when we talk about advanced care planning in general, and unfortunately, as your experience shares, like it was a perfectly nice day just going out for a walk and road took you down, or combination gravity took you down, but or a variety of things. And that you had to put that plan in place, whether that was for today, this afternoon, or 100 years from now, when you're thinking, when there may be other things you might be facing. As you said, none of us have figured out immortality. Since that's the case, we need a plan. And
Okay.
fortunately, you are able to activate your plan. And it often, in my experience in working with solo agers, is that it's very daunting when you don't feel you have people to ask. You just go about your life regardless, because if you don't have someone to ask, you may not do that work. As you said, it's hard. It's a beautiful fall day, at least here in Boston, where we're speaking, hopefully, somewhat where you are. And why sit and think about what I want and what I don't want for care if I can't advocate for myself? If it's a gorgeous day outside, I'd rather be outside.
Exactly.
So I think that's all really helpful advice and an excellent example of, you never know when you're going to need that resource. The additional resource I would throw in is a HIPAA release, because in
Okay.
your case, although during surgery you might have needed to activate a healthcare proxy, you may have wanted to also, and you probably did, authorize people to speak to the medical
Uh-huh.
professionals on your behalf. And so sometimes people overlook the HIPAA release, thinking that the healthcare proxy sometimes does come into play and sometimes does not, depending on the situation. So, in your fabulous list of resources to have, I just thought I would throw that one in as well. From our conversations, I've learned that Boise and the surrounding areas are growing rapidly. There's
Uh-huh.
also a sense of community. Do you feel that local community and your experience is a good one, and may reflect on this? How do you think that the local community comes together to help solos or people who are in need of assistance, whether they identify as a solo ager or not? Everyone is aging from the minute we arrive on the planet. Are there local community initiatives, organizations, resources that you can think of through your own experience, through your professional experience, that have impacted you and or would be useful to share with people? With you?
Well, yes, there's true. And I first want to say Boise is my hometown, and it's always been a very special place. Boise's always been known for a great place to raise family, and we've had generations upon generations here. We used to be a little pass through town. You'd pass
Uh-huh.
through us on your way to Seattle or Spokane or to California. And now we're like number one place to live in the nation. And we have been in the top 10 for probably about the past 10 or 15 years. So we're experiencing this growth that we have never seen before. And along with growth, as you know, with anything, there's good and there's bad. And so prices are rising. I've seen rents go from 550 to the same apartment now is probably about 1450. And I've been only been home for 10 years. I'm in my 11th year. And it just went really quick. I felt like I got home just in time to see all this transpire, because the first couple of years I was home, it was like, okay, this is really mellow still. And then we've got Meridian. I don't know if you're familiar with Sacramento, California, but they've got all kinds of little outlying towns, and they're all kind of one. That's what's happening to Boise. All our little towns we're just turning into this huge, wonderful place to live. And so when I first got involved in daily money management, the association I'm with, the American Association of Daily Money Managers, they encourage us to reach out to CSAs.
Uh-huh.
So that's the two people that so I started connecting with them. And one of them has created an organization called Learn Idaho. And that stands for Lifelong Education and Aging Resource Network. And they do a lot of different things. They've got a YouTube channel that has 145 videos on it now, with about 8 different topics that are like health, wealth, elder abuse, caregiving. We now have one, they just started this month with pre-planning and funerals, which I think is important, because you can go and find out this information on YouTube. And if you have questions, then you have resources to follow up on. So it brings it all together. And so if you don't want to talk about it, if you don't want to deal with it, then go to the YouTube channel and start watching this stuff and start learning. One of the really fantastic things that organization does as well is they have gotten grants from Senior Planet with art. And so they are teaching senior technology classes all over the valley, which is really awesome. It's really growing. And that's good because it's nothing like coding. It's just simple stuff like how to use your iPhone, how to use my chart, which is a huge thing for anyone now to navigate through my chart. And those are all free. Everything that we do is free to seniors. And then we started this year doing these senior resource fairs at different locations for about 2 hours. So seniors can come and get information about all the different vendors. And it doesn't cost them anything. We always have little prizes at the end, which is fun. It's a fun little event. And then they have all the professional members meet once a quarter just to network and see each other. And then something that I find very useful that Learn does, they have somebody present about their business, like I presented about daily money management, and everybody that's watching gets a CEU,
So
which I think,
credit. Yes.
yes, which for me, I learned so much from that because it's geared to that. And then I get a CEU. So it's a win.
Right.
So that organization, and then there's another one, they are called Happen. And Happen stands for Healthcare Associates Providing Positive Education and Networking. And what they do is every month they have a luncheon, and one of their members will get up and talk for about 15, 20 minutes about what they do. They also give away prizes. I'm a prize person. I like that. And they just so, and they work, and it's the professionals like the head people from St. Luke's and St. Al's, of which are the two major hospitals here, as well as caregivers, which I think is totally awesome. And the state of Idaho has always been this, I don't know, we're the last of the Wild West. We freak wheel. We don't like government telling us what to do, that kind of thing. But the Idaho Department of Finance is really, they're writing legislation to help protect seniors and family members with all this financial stuff because it's been kind of loosey-goosey. So those two organizations, and one thing Happen does that I really appreciate is they send out every week I'll get what healthcare location has beds. So if I was a provider, I would know what I would know. Or if I was a case manager, care manager, I would know what beds were available. And they have little events that you can go to all these different things. So those two are the organizations. And then the 211, which is where you call, and what's the opposite of 911? You have 211 where you call resources. Yeah. But I personally think that these two organizations are the ones that I participate in because they have the most connectivity.
I think it's also fabulous because one of the pieces of planning in general when it comes to aging is the commitment to living a dynamic life and the commitment to lifelong learning. And here people are given the opportunities to do their own learning, as you said, on their own pace and their own schedule. They can pull up YouTube and sit in the comfort of their home or their car or on their phone or tablet or whatever device they would like, or in the library using the internet, because that's also important for people in terms of accessibility, and be able to take in new information, pause when they want to, return to something, skip to something else. I think that's really fantastic. And to have that literally at people's fingertips, not only online, but then also both of these organizations to have in-person opportunities for people in general, professionals to connect with each other and people in general to connect with each other to further enhance those support networks that we talked about. I think
Yes.
is particularly key and I think is really wonderful. And your active participation in it has parallel impact. One, as a professional in your own growth and development, and also in your experience, you're framing around this experience of the fall and the injury and navigating your way through, having different colleagues to call on. One of the things that's been fantastic during our conversation, there are so many resources you've mentioned that may be new to people as they're listening. Patient advocates, CSAs, which are certified senior advisors. There are death doulas. There are all of these different pieces and resources. And what I will do in the show notes is put and the Association of Daily Money Managers to make sure that people know where they can go to the main association website and learn more about daily money managers, which are an excellent resource for people in general, certainly for solo agers. Are there unique challenges you think that the solo agers in Idaho this is your sample of where you're living now, right? You're not in the other 49 states or other territories, but do you feel that there are unique challenges that are facing solo agers in particular in relation to other regions of the country?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. And I think in Idaho, so if anybody's familiar with Idaho, we're the state that has a panhandle. So we're shaped like this. And so Boise's down here. And then 3 hours away, 2.5, 3 hours away is Twin Falls area, Idaho Falls. Those are like the biggest places in Idaho. And then Sun Valley's up here about 3 hours away at Sun Valley and Ketchum, and that's where a lot of very wealthy people live. But we have a lot of rural area. And my concern is how many people are we missing because they live in a rural area, they don't have computer access, they don't care about computers, they understand computers, but maybe they're having cognitive decline. So how do we find them and get them connected to the resources that are so available right here in the Treasure Valley? If I can share some statistics with you, I'd like to do that. So from July's 2023 U.S. Census population estimates, 21.4% of the population in rural Idaho counties are at the retirement age of 65 and older, twice as high as the state's share of 65 and older residents at 10.7%. Recent numbers provided by the Department of Labor show the state's population grew by nearly 26,000 people between July 2022 and July 2023 to nearly 1,965,000 people. And so you think about that many people, they're not throughout the whole state. Most people gravitate toward the cities. So that puts us fourth nationally in percentage of growth, and that's according to an article by Nick Rosenberger of the Idaho Statesman. It was dated January 15th, 2024. And so that's really my major concern is because there's a lot of people that have lived here that maybe they're more senior than me. Maybe they're 80 years old. Maybe a lot of people don't want to use the computer. We've been a very private state and they either don't want to or they don't understand it, or maybe they don't have one. So and I noticed when I was going through this process and trying to tell people without ripping their heads off that, hey, my arm's broken. I can't really type on can you just fax that over?
Shit.
How do you serve people when they can't access a computer for whatever reason or won't? How do you serve them? That's my main concern.
Yeah,
Really.
I have that often with clients who ask for copies of x-rays or some other kind of scan, and an office will refer people to the portals for some people. So their portal, you mentioned my chart through Epic as one of the portals and one of the more popular ones throughout the country. And so people would have to log on to that to see that. And there are people who said, I don't want to do that. Can you give me a copy on CD? The way we don't have the capability to do that anymore. Technology has moved on that way. And while I can understand that in terms of the evolution of technology, we still need to work with people where they are and meet them where they are. So being able to access the internet through the library, when I recommend books about solo aging, they're always with the mindset of how accessible are they available in the library, because not everyone has the means to purchase books or wants to add books at this point to their bookshelves. And so that whole piece of accessibility of where you live, of rural and urban, of ex-urban, suburban, all of that can really make a difference. I have a colleague who does a lot of consulting, who's worked with people in the agriculture industry, and they've shared that there are many people who, after multi generations of family farms and family businesses, are moving to urban centers because that's where they then can access healthcare and are closing these businesses, which affects us all across our whole country. That's not a unique
Exactly.
to that location. And so I think it's a really good point, certainly about the growth and also how people access things and how people have information provided to them where they are. You also mentioned Senior Planet, which, as you said, is in a partnership with AARP. And so they offer all kinds of classes in terms of navigating some kind of technology or just the opportunity to take classes through technology. There's also something called Get Set Up. Their website is getsetup.io, and their focus is on helping older adults also navigate technology and take classes and that kind of thing. And so, what's fantastic is I talk about this with solo aging all the time. If we wait for the change, and we know this in any industry or any discipline or any life experience, if we wait for the change to come from the higher up, we're waiting a long time. If we choose to affect change ourselves and it comes more from a grassroots location, then it tends to be that we're able to affect change more quickly. And so these organizations, the work you do, your experience, all of that, and being able to plug people into resources, I think is really incredibly important. We've covered a lot in terms of resources, your own experience. Do you feel like there's anything? I'm sure we could continue this conversation for a very long time. Is there anything you feel we left out before we shift just a little bit? Will get know you a little better?
I think the one thing I'd like to share is because a lot of people the world is going through so much right now. And I don't know if any of us really understand what's happening, but Idaho's either eighth or sixth highest in the nation for suicide rates. And I just would like a lot of people that, especially older men that don't have their spouse anymore, or I just really would ask people to reach out if you feel lonely, because this world is very isolated. Some people believe technology brings us together, and it does. This is a great example, but in many ways, it separates us.
Right.
And I just know from living in the state that that it's important to reach out and it's important to connect with other people. When people start getting something like Alzheimer's or dementia, they present really well. And it's hard to know that there's something actually happening. And if you stop and think that person, their whole mind is changing. So, and I'm not there. I don't have it. I'm not experiencing it, but it's got to be extremely scary. And to have patience with each other and kindness with each other. And especially if you're on the earth for 80 years, I think you deserve a lot of respect.
So as we're recording this, yesterday was Ageism Awareness Day. So it's always, and every day should be. There was a concerted effort to really highlight it yesterday. Of course, every day should be. But I think that's another important part, that as we age, the whole piece of how society reflects on aging and sees value and the unique experiences and knowledge that people have and be able to gain from that. So I think all of that's extremely important. And I'm really glad you included that. Just a quick shifting of gears before we finish up, and just to get a couple of personal insights. If there is a particular skill or talent that you had the opportunity to master instantly, what would it be and why?
It would be being a concert pianist because when I was young, I played the piano for several years and I was very good at it. And I miss it a lot. And you can play that keyboard and you get beautiful sounds. You type on these laptops.
Don't
Most of
get
the
to
time,
see.
I'd like to take him out to the shooting range.
Right. You ever
It would be, yeah, arts. Yeah. That would
Do
be
you
it.
have occasion to plug into that or with your schedule? Now you're navigating preparation for surgery and all of that. But with that aside, do you have opportunity to plug into arts in the way that you find meaningful at all?
I actually to write songs, and I finally found a guitarist here in the valley that would work with me. And we recorded a song and I submitted it to the Idaho Songwriters Association. So I'm just waiting to see how people respond to the songwriting. I certainly don't want a career going out there doing concerts and living that life, but I'd like to write songs. So
So that's
we'll see.
fantastic. That's
It was my
wonderful.
one thing to do that scared me for Halloween.
That's good. Stepping out of our comfort zones is always a great way to grow, even though it's very hard to inch our way. Is there a piece of advice that you've received that has stuck with you in your different travels, tapping into different disciplines and careers and life experiences that you would like to share?
I think I was very blessed to be raised by the man that raised me. He was a very kind man, and he always taught me that people are the same wherever you go. Just treat people with dignity and respect. And that's what I try to do. I try to just show up every day and be present for that person that ends up encountering me or I encounter them. And just be, it seems like we're losing so much of our humanity. And I think that we need to fight for that. We
I
need to
do.
be kind to each other and respect each other, and we've all gone through things, we've all made mistakes. Let's just,
Right.
be human to each other.
Embrace the human in everyone. Thank you for that. And it's really been a pleasure having this conversation. And I know listeners, reviewers will get so much from our conversation. So thank you for sharing your experience and the resources. For our listeners, you can learn more about Elizabeth in general and her work through Daily Money Management via her website, which is blackswanmoneymanagement.com. Given that you're preparing for surgery, I have a feeling there's a little bit of time in which you're returning back to engaging with clients, but I didn't want to skip mentioning your website in general. And we will, of course, make sure to include that in the show notes with all of the various resources Elizabeth was kind enough to mention and share. And so, with that, I want to thank people for tuning in to the Navigating Solo podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any questions or topic suggestions or guest suggestions, you can email us at podcasts@navigatingsolo.com. Until next time, stay empowered and stay connected. I'm your host, Ailene Gerhardt, and this is the Navigating Solo podcast.